With California's new law causing huge debates over parental rights and gender issues, Bill Maher's old clip is going viral again. People are connecting Maher's points to what's happening now in California and the national conversation.
Which is like, if some father and mother have health care for their kid lined up who's trans, just stay the fuck out of their business.
Said something I've heard Democrats say a lot. We didn't get our message out. Maybe I'm paraphrasing, but that's it. And I've said this before to Democrats. No, you did. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Democrats haven't learned a thing since the last election, and Bill Maher has been calling them out for their lack of self-awareness. The American comedian totally dismantled the MSNBC's host for their anti-Trump narrative. What exactly did the MSNBC's host say to warrant this response?
Let them make that decision. That's their decision to make. And you don't have to make that for your family. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your family.
But the argument is whether the child should make the decision.
But the child is never making the decision. The parents are always making the decision. Parents consent to medical care.
Well, here in California, you're allowed to hide it from the parents if the kid is...
This is proof that when you lie, the first person you fool is yourself. And when you continue lying, you get further and further from reality, until you have convinced yourself that permanently mutilating an innocent child is okay.
Yes.
Thank you, one person who knows that.
But I mean...
Somebody knows that is the case.
I think in the vast majority, and we've been hearing from parents right now whose kids' medical care has been interrupted. I think there's a way to talk about...
Well, of course, they would say it's not medical care. They would say it's
what they're saying.
Disfiguring a child.
I think they should mind their own business.
Bill Maher correctly pointed out the state of California does this without parent permission and will also take the child if the parent objects.
I really do. I think they should mind their own business. And I think that's true about a lot of things. I think there is this sense in which there was this sort of backlash politics, some of which I understood, some of which people I know felt that way. I don't think what people wanted was for the women CIA agents at the CIA to be told that they can't get together once a month to celebrate former women's.
This is the craziest and least tenable thing in the history of things. There are some things children decide what to wear. There are some things parents decide, tonsillectomy. There are some things nobody gets to decide because they are horrific, mutilation by proxy.
Lies. I just don't, I think fundamental parts of what we call in this country the traditions of pluralism, which is what this country is. And pluralism is another word for diversity. If we're not going to use that one, let's use pluralism. That fundamentally there's a majority that understands that we all come from different places. And part of what makes this country work is we acknowledge
they really do live in an alternate reality. These people are not going to learn because they believe that they are right. They have faith in their ideology and they are fanatical. You cannot reason with people like that.
Administration is also working to protect our children from toxic ideologies in our schools. A few years ago, January Littlejohn and her husband discovered that their daughter's school had secretly, socially transitioned their 13-year-old little girl.
They are letting their desires run through every aspect of their thinking. They really think they are going to push these ideas to the general public.
Teachers and administrators conspired to deceive January and her husband while encouraging her daughter to use a new name and pronouns. They, them pronoun, actually. All without telling January, who is here tonight and is now a courageous advocate against this form of child abuse.
The anti-Trumpers somehow think people will fold their hands and give in to their pitch because they label themselves as intellectuals, and you are just some dumb commoner.
January, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
They can't read the room because they think they are smarter than the room. They won't come back to reality either because they don't want to.
Stories like this are why, shortly after taking office, I signed an executive order banning public schools from indoctrinating our children with transgender ideology.
Using his Marxist wordplay, he conveniently ignores the fact that accepting parents' decisions to irreversibly harm their children in the name of radical gender ideology paves the way for the state and institutions to push this ideology onto our children without our consent.
I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning.
This same man pushed vaccines like crazy. Where was his "it's none of your business" then? Isn't this also the same argument the slave owners had? It's none of your business. They are mine, and I can do what I decide is right for them.
And criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie.
The answer for Democrats is never reflection. Just keep the policy, but change the words. Out with diversity, in with pluralism.
Stories like this are why, shortly after taking office, I signed an executive order banning public schools from indoctrinating our children with transgender ideology.
This isn't like a bad haircut you see in an old picture. And ask your parents, what were you thinking and why did you cut my hair like that? This is a lifelong decision that parents absolutely can't and shouldn't make for a child.
I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning.
Why would a parent have the right to sterilize their child for life? Why should a parent be able to cut off their child's body parts? That's child abuse by any definition.
Chose Ken Martin.
Yep.
I was not aware of who he was before. I did not think it got off to a great start because I think they need to completely reroute themselves, and I don't think they did it. What do you think?
I think there's sort of two different imperatives that are in a little bit of tension with each other.
Chris Hayes is the worst kind of pseudo-intellectual. It's a guarantee that he has no idea what mucking around in the code base means.
So one, I think there's an imperative right now for the party to stand up against the most destructive things that Musk and Trump are doing. And I think they're doing some genuinely destructive things. I mean, there's people walking around the world right now with like devices inside their bodies from clinical trials sponsored by USAID that they can't get out.
They can't hear their own hypocrisy and gaslighting rhetoric. They are that deep in it. If Dems quit worrying about how to win and actually thought about what is best for the people, they would do better. They burnt their bridges. They do not care about people, just their silly chess games.
The guards that were guarding ISIS prisoners in Syria were paid on USAID salaries that got cut off. There's a 25-year-old mucking around the code base of the Treasury system. So there's things they have to do to try to oppose. But it's also the case that like all of the reflection that happened after losing that election and trying to figure about how do you win back people you lost.
They seem to really focus on things that benefit themselves and their friends, like the whole USAID money laundering scheme. Now we know how they actually get rich.
This was real and true. And I guess my feeling is you gotta fight, you gotta try different things, and you have to be authentic. You can't like reverse engineer any of this off a blueprint. And I really think this is true about politics. Steve Jobs once said, it's not the customer's job to know what they want.
Maher has a great point. The Democrats had horrible messages. Most people hated everything Democrats were for. Yet Democrat Party strategists think they can just spin or rephrase a bad position in a creative way to make it sound good.
Like, it's our job. And you couldn't have reverse engineered Barack Obama off of George W. Bush. And you couldn't have reverse engineered Donald Trump off of Barack Obama. What happens in the end of an election is everyone sifts through the data and they come up with their perfect, their plan based on, will this work?
Actually, that kind of deception does work on a lot of weak minds, as Kamala proved by getting many votes.
And with this group, and we got attack here and there. And what politics is about is a certain point is like innovation and communication. You got to come up with new stories and new ways of telling.
This Ken Martin guy, he said something I've heard Democrats say a lot. We didn't get our message out. Maybe I'm paraphrasing, but that's it. And I've said this before to Democrats. No, you did. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The Democrats have become fixated on narratives and messaging. treating voters like imbeciles.
Like, he texted me things like, well, you know, you can't fix stupid. Sorry, that doesn't work with me. Yeah, you're stupid because you're not thinking about the bigger picture. You're not thinking about maybe we did something wrong. Maybe we're not perfect. You know, it's like a relationship. You got dumped. America dumped you, and they're all like, you don't know what you had.
Why does Chris Hayes think his opinions matter or that he seemingly speaks for anyone? It's clear that he desperately speaks in such a way to keep a paycheck, to influence his media bosses that he still matters.
Sitting president's job, Joe Biden is still president of the United States for another month and a half, or if not him, then the incoming president's job, Donald Trump, who was duly elected, should be the job of his top campaign donor that no one elected. What are we doing here? This is insane. It's precisely what advocates of campaign finance reform warned would happen in a post-Citizens United world. So while Musk is basically running the presidential transition, where exactly is the president-elect?
The problem is that the Democrats don't want to represent Americans. They want to change us. They have an ideology, and they struggle to find ways to coerce us into supporting them. We're not having it.
The oldest man ever elected in the history of the Republic? It's clear on the campaign trail Trump has lost a separate two, and that makes sense. He's almost 80. Since then, he's mostly hung out and golfed at Mar-a-Lago, and he did finally get out of the house yesterday for a very important event to receive an honorary Patriot of the Year award on Fox Nation.
Hayes has failed to realize that what Musk and Trump are doing is what the majority of Americans want, not just voters.
Maybe Trump doesn't have the actual energy to do the job. Maybe letting Elon Musk basically conduct diplomacy, talk to Hill lawmakers while Trump collects awards from his fans is the division of labor.
Auditing the government is an immensely popular position. Fighting that is literally the dumbest thing Democrats can do.
I got to my card that says trans. Let's talk about it.
I gotta go soon.
Let's do 5 minutes.
Okay.
Other countries have national health services. The Democratic position is leave it up to parents, doctors. Just leave. It's not the government's decision. That's the Democratic position. What's wrong with that position? Joe Biden,
Well, the Democratic position in this state, the school has the right to hide it from the parents.
He is just mad Trump, and Elon are so effective. His sob stories get blunted when Elon points to all the patently absurd things we spend on.
That is something that is not going to go well with the average voter. And again, I'm not even a parent, and I get it. Okay? I think the governor here used the word snitch. If I'm wrong, I didn't say it.
So
I think I read that.
there are delicate problems here. But wait,
Liberals should be happy we can spend on actual important things. They should hate fraud the most, and the fact that they don't is telling.
there's delicate problems here, and there's a delicate problem where you have a kid, all right, who is either non-binary or trans, who feels scared at home, feels unsafe at home. Those things do happen in the world. There are things that happen in the world.
They
But
do.
for the most part, that's not what we're talking about. For the most part, what we're talking about is a teenager. They have a gender dysmorphia.
Chris Hayes shows us again how the press is not capable of change. They blame everyone else for the consequences they face due to their own actions. They had a sacred duty enshrined in the Constitution, and they messed with it. We need to change the channel when their faces appear.
Deeply unhappy, depression, all really rampant.
Yes,
and they go to their parents.
They feel that, and then they blame it on the thing that has been put in their mind way too much. That it may be because of you're in the wrong body, to put it probably wrongly, but that we understand what that means. Okay.
Perfect example of journalists thinking it's their job to change minds rather than report the truth. When are these people going to get it? Americans are tired of them.
Your bodily health comes first. And also, there have been 2 recent reports. There was the Cass report in England. And just so people, again, have perspective on this, we're the only country that still does it this way.
Right, we've stopped
All the
giving
other
those drugs.
countries that
They have.
that liberals always look to for the liberal guidance, England, the Scandinavian countries, they're not like what we do.
Their lying, cheating, and criticisms are no longer working. As long as Chris Hayes is a voice for the Democrats, Republicans will thrive.
That's right. They were.
They were.
And then they realized there's no evidence that it
that-
helps, and actually there's a lot of evidence that it hurts, and they stopped.
And there was a report just in the New York Times yesterday, and for the New York Times to put this out says something because they're pretty woke on these kind of issues. And there was this woman, Dr. Olson Kennedy, who is for doing puberty blockers.
He's so out of touch with Americans, but sincerely believes he's representing the majority of Americans' thoughts. The guy is clueless and doesn't know Americans do not want his product.
And she basically buried a report for 10 years because
Right.
she said, you know, it could be used in court. Well, isn't that why we do studies?
Right.
Because we
That's the
want to
whole
find
point.
out what the answer is. But you do concede, or I'm asking if you concede.
So far, Trump has shown real leadership by protecting children from irreversible harm and standing up against the radical agenda targeting them. No child should be pressured into life-altering medical procedures. Trump is making it clear, kids deserve protection, not ideology. This is why Maher's clip is blowing up again now. People are watching what's happening in California and across the country and realizing this debate is far from over. Do you support Chris Hayes' stand? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you won't miss any new updates, and I will see you in the next one.